Alright, so I'm sure you've all heard about the war that's going on in the Middle East, but how did this massive conflict begin? The history of the Jewish people began thousands of years ago in the Middle East, but after Roman rule and the fall of the Roman Empire and the growing dominance of Muslim control of the region, the Jewish people found themselves increasingly unwelcome in their homeland. For hundreds of years, the Jewish people were moving across the globe from place to place, trying to find an area of acceptance. In 1896, the political activist and journalist Theodor Herzl published a pamphlet proposing that the Jews of the world come together to reunite and create their own Jewish nation in the land they believe was promised to them by God, Israel. The lands of the Middle East had been under the control of the Ottoman Empire from the 1400s until World War I. The nations of the Turkish Empire followed the religion of Islam. The British and Allied forces defeated the Turkish Empire in World War I. In 1917, the British government released the Balfour Declaration. It was an official announcement of the government's support for the creation of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. Finally, the Zionist movement had government support. After World War II, in the events of the Jewish Holocaust, the United Nations wanted to create a Jewish state in the Middle East. The United Nations tried many times to get the Arab nations surrounding Palestine to agree on borders to create a Jewish state living peacefully side by side with the existing Arab communities. The Arab nations rejected every proposal presented by the United Nations for a compromise on dividing the land. But Britain and France controlled the Middle East. Britain at the time was quite used to having much power. Britain drew the boundaries for the new Jewish state and moved over 750,000 Palestinians from their homes to create the land for the Jewish settlers. On May 14, 1948, the nation of Israel declared its independence as a nation within the borders granted to them by Britain. So why is this a turning point? After this day, wars would be fought for years in the Middle East, changing the course of history throughout the entire world. On May 15, 1948, the Arab nations came together and declared war on Israel. The war lasted for almost a year, and with the military support from Britain and the United States, they not only won the war but captured new Palestinian territory, expanding the Jewish borders beyond the ones created by Britain. The Arab nations made it loud and clear that they would never give in to Western rule and the traditions of controlling conquered lands. Many powerful Muslim leaders vowed to lead their people in rebellion against Western rule. They vowed to never surrender and that the war against non-Muslim is a holy war. However, the United Nations was able to create a temporary peace agreement to end the year-long war. Israel and Palestine mostly kept their word of keeping peace, but still, the Israelis and Palestinians had back-and-forth battles across their borders for the following decades. On June 5, 1967, fighting broke out between Israel and several Arab states working together. These fights were led by Egypt, Syria, and Jordan. Israel quickly dominated the Arab nations with its superior air force. Because of this, a treaty ending the war was signed only 6 days after. Again, Israel expanded its borders by capturing large sections of Palestine and Egypt. Israel now had over 1 million Palestinians living in the territory they now controlled. Following the war and the capture of the land, the United Nations called for Israel to withdraw from the captured territories in exchange for lasting peace. To this, Israel refused. On October 6, 1973, a group of Arab nations launched a surprise attack on Israel on Yom Kippur. This is the holiest day of the year in the Jewish religion. After almost 3 weeks of heavy fighting and thousands of deaths on each side, there was no clear winner. The United Nations helped to create a new peace treaty. Through a series of negotiations, largely led by the United States, Israel agreed to return its captured lands back to Egypt in 1982. During this period, Palestine was heavily being influenced by the Palestinian Liberation Organization, also known as PLO. The organization was founded to retake all Arab land and eliminate Israel. The first official recognition of Palestine by Israel and Israel by Palestine happened in 1993 when the two nations signed an agreement called the Oslo Accords. These agreements were negotiated through the United States and were meant to create a shared vision on steps to take to establish relations between the two nations. Neither country lived up to the promises of these accords. On October 7, 2023, the Islamic Resistance Movement, more commonly known as Hamas, launched a brutal attack on Israel, attacking regular people, not just the military. Around 1,200 people were killed and 240 taken hostage. In response, Israel has killed over 22,000 Palestinians in a battle that is still going on today. international reaction to this war goes to the extremes of both sides. Many Western leaders say that they are behind Israel no matter what because it is the only democracy in the Middle East, and that democracy will be defended at all costs. Many leaders, especially in the Middle East, believe that Palestinians have had their land taken from them by Israel, and it is their right to fight for it back. These nations provide money and weapons and public support for one side or the other. Behind Israel stands the United States and much of Europe. Behind Palestine stands Iran and much of the Arab world. While Russia has not directly gotten involved yet, they favor Palestine. Leaders around the world are concerned that this war will get bigger and bigger as countries become more involved. Many leaders believe that we are on the path to World War III.